if China has a corporate tax, depending on which year it is, it changes 10 to 15 points lower than ours. And if China has a currency 30 to 40 points below ours, depending on, again, what day of the week it is, but 30 to 40 points lower than ours. And if they have no environmental standards and slave labor wages and 16 to 18-hour work days with no benefits, how do we compete with that? Now, the mainline libertarian think tanks, like the Heritage Foundation and others, that claim they're conservative, claim they're libertarian, they'll tell you, oh, well, free trade just means we're totally wide open and we don't care what you do. You can have 100% tariff on us, we've got 0 on you. And then they don't complain when we have our coal power plants shut down, which gives us cheap electricity, and then China builds new ones. They don't point out that it's totally rigged at a 90-degree angle against us. Totally.
If somebody wants to build a coal power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
We're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
And Coal Resource Director Zhao Yu Wei doesn't think this will affect China. He says the shipping distance compared with Indonesia, Australia, and other traditional thermal coal exporters is too far, so it should not have a direct impact on the Chinese market in the short term.
The historical problem with the coal industry is when we have these pairings back, there's nothing there to replace it. Coal's the only industry in this region. It's not the regulation so much as it is the execution of it. When you come in and you tell this many people that your industry is gone, we have to have someplace to go.
Coal is a leading source of carbon dioxide emissions, and even though Minnesota's already cut carbon emissions by 20%, new federal pollution standards require the state to cut more, 40% by 2030.
Minnesota is being punished because we took this action without the federal government telling us. So whatever that percentage is, reasonable people can disagree about it, but why would we support a policy that punishes the state of Minnesota for acting on our own?
Richard Nixon was the progenitor of the EPA, and the basic rules were established then. And those basic rules are, it's an administrative agency. It's not in the executive branch, it's not in the legislative branch, it's not in the judicial branch, and the president gets to appoint his people to it. And they get to write the regulations that regulate the behavior of corporations and private individuals. And those regulations stand unless disturbed by the courts or by both houses of Congress.
This is going to shut down about 1/10 of our capacity. And as the journal pointed out, if a terrorist were to shut down 1/10 of our coal-generating capacity, it would be an act of war.
And it's done by design. If Trump lowers our corporate tax to the global average, he's only made us on a level playing field. If he goes 5 points below, which he's pushing for, you could argue it's a trade war. So what? We've been getting the short end of the stick for 50 years.
The money that's outside of this country, nobody knows how much. They think it's $2.5 trillion. I think it's probably more than that, but nobody knows. That money, Aaron's going to come back into the country, and it's going to stay here, and they're going to invest it here. And frankly, from now on, when these companies make money outside of the country, they can bring it back in at a reasonable tax. The reason it stays there is the tax is so onerous, as you know. It's a massive tax.
The media's been telling us how to dress and what to eat and what to do and how to talk for 50, 60 years. We've had enough of it.
Part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Oh, the Chinese might have a trade war. Do it. We're already under a trade war. What do you think? 80% of our factories closing and our mining disappearing and rare earth minerals. The U.S. has less than 1% of global rare earth mineral extraction. 30 years ago, we had more than half. We're under economic sabotage. Our fellow InfoWarriors across the United States and across the planet really love the Hillary for President 2016 shirts that we began to put out in 2015. It became a global meme against globalism and corruption, and a very strong maxim that's now being continued on today. So we now have George Soros, because the media attacked me on this whole goblin meme, and they've made huge jokes about it, but it's totally blown up in their face. We now have George Soros as a goblin on the back, and it says with a cross through him, an X like Ghostbusters, no Soros, him as a goblin. It says deport Soros on the bottom, and on the top it says INFOWARS established 1996. So it is a limited edition, deport Soros on the back, Hillary for president on the front, right-hand shoulder, infowars.com. It's powerful. Hope you get out to everybody you know. InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.